introduce him. He is not only Grandmaster, but the president of the World Tong Soo Do Association. I'd like to introduce Kwon Jong-yim Strong.
Good morning. It is a great pleasure to be here in the great state of Arizona for one, but also in Region 2 of the World Tong Soo Do Association. You should be very proud of yourselves, but also of your leaders here, the masters, and those who chose to come over from Region 20 to be part of it. And we're very happy, my wife and I, to be part of this as well. Many of you know that my whole family are martial artists. Rachel Shonan, my older daughter is Nidan, and my younger daughter is Master Forzan, as of 3 weeks ago. We've all been in this journey a very long time. And when I was thinking about coming up here for this moment and looking at the championship, I reflected back on Grandmaster Shin and his life, and a little segment of his life. You know him in a variety of ways. You see his picture. We were doing Jay Chul Shin Tong Soo Do a moment ago. And I thought back to him and teaching Tong Soo Do. He went into the military and the Air Force in 1958. By the early 1960s, he was training a lot of American GIs at the Air Force Base at Osan. Chuck Norris, of course, is one of his famous ones. And believe it or not, the original application of Chuck Norris is in the headquarters. Grandmaster Shin kept meticulous records of everyone. So one of the famous ones, for us, Grandmaster Bodewit was one of his students as well. His number's like 5,668. So it's way down the list. At any rate, Grandmaster Shin came here in October of 1968 because of the growing number of Tong Soo Do students that he had taught and those that had established some studios across the country. He tried to come earlier, but because of some political situations between Taekwondo and Tong Soo Do, he was unable to come. But eventually, in 1968, he came as a 6th degree black belt. He came to the East Coast. We had studios there around the New Jersey area, Burlington, and so forth. Not too many in the country, but enough that he came and he wanted to check. But he had been writing back and forth with these people since 1962. His very first information letter. And he kept writing monthly, sometimes twice. But he came here and started teaching. But he was only going to stay for a very short while, just a few months, and then return home because he had a wife, and she was pregnant. And he wanted to be with them. And he had a pretty good job waiting for him. But things happened. The Burlington studio instructor walked out and left the students. And so they asked him to come in and take over for a little while to take care of those students, which he did. About 25 students, not a lot. Maybe a lot in those days, but not a lot of them. But because people knew him already, and he was written up in 20th Century Warriors very quickly after that, publication in Karate Illustrated in the book itself, people started coming to train with him from all up and down the coast. They'd come on weekends. His students' population grew 50, 100, 200. By the fall, by the spring, he said, I really can't leave because I've got so many students, and the job here teaching is probably better than the one back in Korea. So he eventually brought his family here. Now, one thing was occurring on the scene in the USA, not so much in Korea. You remember, he's brought up in the traditional art of Tong Soo Do, which is not a sport. But a little bit of sport had started, and Taekwondo sometimes was defined as a sport, as a martial sport. That was not his traditional upbringing, and that is not what he wanted to do here. Nor did he teach his students that. They did do some fighting, but it was not a sport style. Lots of bruises. He talked about his black belt test of broken bones and bruises all over for the 1st degree test. But nevertheless, when he came here, a tradition had started in New York area with a few early Tong Soo Do who changed over to Taekwondo people. So he, in a sense, allowed his students to go to these tournaments, as he called them. But he's quoting in magazines It's earned trade journals, black belt, Taekwondo Times in the early version of it, and even in the book, that we're not a tournament style martial art. We're not the ones that go out and want to, he didn't say this way, but you implied it, beat people up, where there are always winners and there are always losers. And the idea of martial art is not part of sport. It is to train, to compete, to win at all costs. But he allowed him to do it. Now we move through the years and we get to November of 1982 when he established the World Association. And he still had this idea, still had this philosophy. Yes, we can have that competition. And some of the studios were doing it from the East Coast area, down in Alabama, there were some down there. But then he decided, very wisely, to try to bring people together in 1986. In a world championship, he took a great chance in bringing them together, very costly also at that time. And what transpired, as Master Nicole certainly knows, because Grandmaster was with him out in California when some things were starting to happen in '86, most of the Korean instructors that were with him left. And he worried about the championship working out, both bringing people in and financially. But it was a great success. People came in from 9 countries where Tang Soo Do had spread. So it was a success in the sense of bringing people together, maybe not financially yet, but it was a success. But he brought them together not as this sport karate, but for people to come, not just to win and lose, but for everyone to win because of the competition. Because he wanted to develop, even in those days, a family of martial artists who subscribed to his way of thinking, the traditional way of thinking. Of course, we modernize along the way and add traditions to it. But that was his idea. If we came together, we would grow. We would grow into one big family. We would grow in the expertise of the art, and we would grow in the philosophical dimensions of Tang Soo Do. And he espoused that ever since, everywhere. Now his mind kind of changed eventually, and he said, I want all regions to have championships also, for the same purpose. Not everyone can come to the World Championship, but at least we can bring them together in their own regions, like you are here today. And you're part of a legacy of long-standing tradition of competition here, being part of a family, not to win and lose, but everyone comes out a winner in some respect. You gain more friendships, you gain knowledge by watching people, and I watch you. And I learn, if I see a technique you're doing I like, or the way you're doing something, I go home and practice it. And I do that wherever I travel, and I've done that since the earliest days. So maybe I'll get better by watching and seeing something along the way. You should consider it the same way. I know that you've trained hard, and you will train hard for the future events. And know this is a fine competition, just as Grandmaster laid out for us, and he saw it unfold throughout the next 30 years of his life. And it's our desire to continue that tradition, to continue to come to these things, to train for them, for the purpose of showing our Tang Soo spirit, showing the techniques that you've learned, and learning from the experience as well. So I come here today as representative, the president of the World Association, to be with you, to watch, to take that news back, and of course to see you next summer over in Greensboro. And we got lots of extra activities planned for you even prior to the championship next year. So thank you, Master Williams, for inviting me here. We have a 30-year relationship, and on behalf of Rachel and me, thank you for all of you giving your friendship to us as well. Have a great day, enjoy the competition, and I'll see you next time. Tang Soo.